In this video, I'll be talking a bit about the changes made in patch 2 of Attila. First, some general changes, pun intended, because the first thing I'm going to be talking about is the general changes and the changes to the generals of the Langobards. So it seems like the Creative Assembly listened and created some unique generals instead of just the fucking Germanic nobles. And now we have Bejeweled Retinue and Knudomar's Entourage. Knudomar's Entourage is probably the best anti-cavalry general you can get. So this pushes up the elements a bit on the power ranking, in my opinion, because Knudomar's Entourage now has it's quite ridiculous. They have 3 precursor ammo that they give a 30 bonus against infantry, against cavalry. And they can also use they are heavy melee, and they also have a 30 bonus against cavalry in melee. And the bejeweled units, the bejeweled nobles and the bejeweled retinue now have shield wall, so thank you the Creative Assembly for listening. The other general changes: Burgundian Guard, an upgrade from the Burgundian Axeman for the Burgundians. The Royal Burgundian General, now I predicted this, the Royal Burgundians were, the Burgundian and the Barbed Lancers had a 20 bonus against cavalry. Now they only have a 10 bonus against cavalry, so the Creative Assembly releases something that is close to OP as balls, and then they nerf it, and then almost everyone gets a 10 bonus against cavalry. Not everyone, there are quite a few lancers that don't have it, but many lancers now have a 10 bonus against cavalry as well. So those are the general changes for the Burgundians, and then let's see here, the last one, the Langobards. The Langobards got Godin's Warlord, which has a lot of health, can run amok, which is not optimal for a general. Then we have the Redoubtable Chieftain, a scaled clubman type of character, 20 attack against infantry, 68 armor and 172 health, and 50% missile block chance. This guy takes forever to die, and is very cheap, very, very cheap. Now, some other general changes, not changes to generals, but just changes in general, is that most things have gotten a bit cheaper. So there are too many units to go over here, but just in general, most units have taken a price reduction. And I will go over some of the more game-changing changes. So, first of all, the Germanic horsemen have been nerfed into oblivion, keeping with the tradition of making something either OP as balls or useless. The Germanic horsemen are now close to being useless, because they only have 25 melee damage, they only have 10 bonus against cavalry, which makes their damage potential against cavalry 35. It's horrible. They are now medium, they've lost a bunch of health, they've lost armor, they're just a much, much worse unit than they were, which of course makes elite cavalry viable. Another game-changing change is that the Eastern Roman Empire, their Tagmata cavalry, has lost the 30 bonus against cavalry. Now they have a 20 bonus. They also have far less impressive stats. However, you would think that, and while we are talking about the Romans, the Scholae Palatinae and the Equites Promoti now shit all over Germanic horse. They do not shit all over. The nobles. And speaking of nobles, for the Alans and the Vandals, these noble Alani cavalry now have the 30 bonus against lords. They are heavy, they have a very good charge bonus, their melee defense is a bit on the low side, good armor, good health. So these guys are now basically Germanic horsemen with a 30 bonus against lords, for slightly more than the Germanic horsemen were. So it's sort of fixing one thing and then breaking another thing horribly. And here you can see Germanic Lancers, no bonus against large, Sarmatians bonus, Elite Sarmatians bonus. So another change is that quite a few, let's see here, Now, no skirmisher cavalry has gotten the Parthian shot trait, which is too bad. Skirmish cavalry, still, you won't see skirmish cavalry used very much. So the price reduction is also on pikes, infantry, a lot of things have gotten cheaper. Germanic spearmasters, Germanic spearmen, they are now running around with 30 bonus against cavalry, so do a lot of other elite spear units, like for the Romans. Auxilia Palatina, Lanciari Seniores, 30 bonuses all around. You can see the Roman cavalry doesn't really have any bonuses to speak of. The Roman bow cavalry doesn't have Parthian shot. Now, if we go to the Huns, quite a few of their cavalry units have gotten 30 bonus against cavalry. So the step-mounted brigands have it. The let's see here, the shamans of the Eternal Sky have it. The steppe raiders have it. The noble Akatsiri raiders have it. So quite a few units here with the 30 bonus. There's also some bow cavalry with it. I believe the Unigod has it. Going freely from memory here. Not 100% sure about that, but I believe they do. And another change is that Axe Infantry now has a 5 bonus against infantry. The Uar warriors have gotten their attack against infantry reduced to 10. In my opinion, they should have no bonus against infantry. The single-handed axes should have a 5 bonus against infantry. The Scary warriors, 30 bonus against cavalry. Shock cavalry has gotten a few more hit points, but still the problem with the Hunnic roster is it's still very much apparent that their elite cavalry options are lighter than the cavalry units of other factions, and since the charge speed is the same for all of the units, then for all of the cavalry units that is, then that means that it's going to be very hard to kite effectively. Now, for the Hunnic horse archers, we have Parthian shot for basically you get Parthian shot, you get Parthian shot, you get Parthian shot, everyone gets Parthian shot. For the Sassanids though, their Sogdian warriors now have 20 AP and 5 base. It was the other way around. The Immortals and Elite Immortals both have a 30 bonus against cavalry. And the Spabed got the Heavy Spata, which gives him 50 melee damage, which is a nice change. The Royal Persian archers got more expensive because they got the mace, and that is a horrible decision. They already are at only 150 range. They don't have elite missile damage, and they are damn useless at their current price range. Price reduction for the Armenian slingers, which is nice. They should probably get further price decrease. A price decrease for the Persian mounted warriors. These cataphracts are, of course, decent cataphracts. They got an increase in their attack against cavalry. Most of them, not the Savarans, not the Persians, but it starts with the Grivpanvar. All of them have a 10 bonus. For the bow cavalry, though, there isn't much Parthian to speak of. Ironic that the Persians don't have Parthian shot. Persian mounted bowmen have only have fire while moving. The Shayada and Immortal Cavalry do have Parthian shot, but at that point they're so expensive that it's not worth bringing them. And the Savaran Cavalry doesn't have Parthian shots, of course. Nav throwers got a price increase because they now have the maces that do 20 AP and 5 base. So let's see here. The Frank system. Okay, so I'll just briefly mention I'm making separate videos about all of the Celt factions, but just briefly mention what they bring to the table. They bring a huge selection of infantry units, skirmishers that are relatively cheap, like these Celtic crossbows 200. They don't have precision, they don't have barrage, but put flaming on these guys and watch cavalry melt. They lack melee cavalry, but they do have some dual-purpose cavalry in the form of units like these round shield raiders and mounted spear raiders. They are not too bad in melee after they have spent their ammunition. The problem is going to be to enable them to spend their ammunition. And yeah, those are the main things about the Celts. They also have all of them have guerrilla deployment, and if you watch my channel, you know what can happen if two armies with guerrilla deployment come up against each other. Hilarity ensues. But the Celts they are sort of gimmicky. They are not overpowered like the Longbeards were when they were released. It's fairly easy to deal with the Celts with a standard army. And some of you wanted me to make predictions as for the overpowered build of the current patch. So in my opinion, nothing much has changed. The change is that you bring, instead of bringing Germanics, you bring Noble Alani Cavalry, and since they now have a 30 bonus against Cavalry, I don't really see the point in upgrading them much, because their morale is good, their melee defense is on the low side, but their offensive stats are great. So one upgrade, I would recommend one upgrade, because you get a lot back for that one upgrade. 2 melee attack, 2 melee defense. And this is going to assume that there's let's say there's a maximum, you can bring maximum 8 cavalry units to the field. Let's just say that's the maximum. So I would bring also a Noble Germanic Horse and the Alani General to be able to support cavalry fights with brace. Then you can bring cheaper Germanic Archers. You can bring 4, 5, 6, whatever you want to bring. In this case, let's just bring 6 just for fun. And now you have the option of going full retard and, for example, bringing some elite Agathersai. This is going to be an army that is too small to... It could be effective, but the problem is you're not going to be able to support your fights everywhere. So if you want to have a slightly bigger melee line, this is an army that works reasonably well. The thing is, though, the Noble Germanic Swords are not great offensively. They are great defensively in Shield Wall. So, what these Germanic Swordsmen will allow you to do, so 6 Noble Germanic Swords, 6 Germanic Archers, 6 Noble Alani, 1 Noble General, and Alani General. This is a build that can be very difficult to deal with unless your opponent is able to support his cavalry fights supremely well. Now, if... what you can do is you can either support your cavalry fights with these Noble Germanics, or you can shield wall them, and then they will do very well and hit way above their weight class. And you can see you still have some upgrades left, so you can put some upgrades on more upgrades on your cavalry, should you so wish. Now, upgrading shock cavalry is not really worth it, in my opinion, because they have such poor melee stats. So something like this is going to be a very effective army. You can bring more units, you can have a very strong skirmishing, you can have very strong infantry. If you want to have some support for your cavalry units, let's say you want to keep any infantry clear of your cavalry units, then you can have a slightly more offensive unit like Sarmatian Warband to follow your cavalry around, or even something like Elite Agathersai. But you can see that if you take in the Elite Agathersai, that's going to make your army significantly smaller than if you bring in 2 Noble Germanics and you bring in 2 Germanic Archers. So for the Vandals and for the Alans, something like this is very powerful and quite hard to deal with. And for the other Germanics, something Germanic factions, then we have the option of... again, this is going to be assuming that you can bring a maximum of 8 cavalry. So it's going to change based on that, but in general, you want to take the best cavalry that you can bring. So Germanic Horsemen are out, not worth bringing anymore. For the other Germanics, I'm going to suggest Noble Germanic Horsemen. Let's just assume that there's a 6 cavalry maximum 6 cavalry for the purposes of this short demonstration. And you're going to bring some cheap, cost-effective infantry. These Gothic warbands are great at supporting cavalry fights and attacking infantry because of their charge bonus of 57. So when they charge into a blob where there's cavalry, they can't get charged, then they die, but if they charge into a blob, they are doing 97 damage on the charge, which is very nice from a unit that has this amount of men. Then you can have your archers, and now you can see you have some funds remaining for bringing. Either you can bring some Gothic folksmen to support your cavalry units, in combat. Give some upgrades to these guys, and now you have a very strong, very full roster. And of course, this is assuming you can only bring 6 cavalry units. So for the something Germanics, this is what it's going to look like. Now, if you look at, take a look at the something else Germanic. You can see that the rosters are so similar that it's once again it's going to be very, very similar what you do. You're going to bring the best cavalry that you can. Preferably melee cavalry. Shock cavalry can absolutely work. And another change, a funny change, is that the Sacra Francisca is really called, the historical name for it is the Skara Frankiska. So in the patch notes they wrote Skara Frankiska, but they haven't changed it in the game. So that is kind of classical creative assembly there. So yeah, skirmish cavalry, still very marginal use. Axe units, still a very marginal use for them, at least in multiplayer. Of course, in single player, everything works. Now, the Western Romans, because the Germanic horse got nerfed, the Western Romans got some breathing room, but that breathing room was snuffed out really quickly by noble Germanics and by Alani horsemen. So I think the main thing we're going to see is a transition from Germanic horsemen to noble Germanics and to noble Alani cavalry. So not really much doesn't change much really. And the Sassanids are still going to struggle. Basically everyone that can't bring good heavy melee cavalry is going to struggle, but the Sassanids do have some breathing room in the fact that they have such cost-effective shock cavalry units. But then again, they need to be supported by melee cavalry or skirmishers, so it's better to have a melee cavalry unit that can just go in and do the job rather than having a shock cavalry unit that needs support in order to do it. So those are my opinions on the patch. And finally, I have probably forgotten something. This is just speaking from memory, so I might have forgotten something. There are some specifics about the different factions that I will cover in separate faction videos, but in this video I just wanted to take the broad strokes. Like Germanic horsemen got nerfed, everything gets cheaper, spear units get 30 bonus, many units get a 30 bonus against cavalry units do, but not the Tugmata loses it. So sure, the Tugmata were looking for a nerf, but the Alani horsemen just went up and took the place of Tugmata. Not quite as OP as the Tugmata were, but considering that they are in Germanic roster, they are still very, 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 very powerful. And in terms of performance though, I have to say that after the patch my game crashes constantly, and you see that I have a mod activated here that shows information from attack against cavalry and the range on skirmish units. I'll leave the link to the mod in the description. It's made by Walrus Jones and it's a very nice mod. Now before the patch I've rarely got crashes in multiplayer. Like I can count the number of crashes on one hand that I got in multiplayer. Now it happens constantly to the point where the game is almost unplayable. And the same does... Now, I have tried this with the mod activated, without the mod, with Radius's blood mod activated, with the mod deactivated, and the problem still persists. And I'm not just deactivating the mod, I'm deleting the mod, so there's nothing remaining in the folder, which is very, very annoying. And the performance of the game has reduced for me after the patch, and I don't think it's as much the blood effects, because I get the same FPS on when I watch a huge battle with blood, even with persistent blood from Radius's mod. I don't get a hit in frames per second. It's just that the game crashes way more often, whether I use the mods or whether I deactivate the mods. So really too bad. Now let's see here if I forgot. Yeah, like I said, I probably forgot something, but I'll cover it in more specific videos. This is just to give my opinion on the broad changes. So some changes I like, the direction they're going with spear. Oh, I forgot to mention that spear infantry got an increase in bracing and expert charge, and together with the attack against cavalry, it makes them a bit more useful. But it's still, they are still not in my opinion, they're still not worth bringing to support cavalry fights, when you can just bring dual-purpose melee infantry or shock infantry instead. So, those are my opinions on the patch, and just to sum up, some changes are good. The Huns are starting to become a bit more powerful. They still have many of the same problems. I still think that the bonus of 5 on axe infantry isn't really enough to warrant bringing axe infantry, so bringing it up to 10, removing it from the UR warriors would be a nice step in the right direction. And yeah, that would be it. And spears still don't have elite spears, even though they have a 30 bonus against cavalry. You're not really going to be able to get people to charge into braced spears 5 ranks deep with cavalry. The spears are, although spears are supposed to counter cavalry, that only happens if the spears are able to stop and brace or join a fight that is already happening, and in that case it's better to just have better cavalry and very cheap melee units to support the cavalry fight anyway. So there are a few steps in the right direction. I hope the Creative Assembly continues to listen to the community. Well, not all of the community, because some people if the game got some of the changes that some people suggest, then things would be horrible indeed. But let's hope they listen to the reasonable parts of the community. Let's put it like that, and keep making these changes. But it needs to be said, they do make changes too big, too many changes, too many balance changes at once, completely changing things, and when that accumulates, it's going to be very hard to create small incremental changes that are easy to gripe with and to make small adjustments so that we're moving towards a more balanced and more fun overall game. What they're doing now is they're just swinging a huge sledgehammer of nerfing and buffing and price reductions and abilities, and it gets very, very chaotic, and that's the reason why I stopped playing Rome 2, because to be honest, it didn't really seem like they knew what they were doing. It seemed like they released an alpha version of game balance, and then they moved towards a beta version, which they then sort of at Emperor Edition they arrived at something that could be called a release version or patch 14 Emperor. But then things started changing so much from patch 14 to patch 15 that people sort of got, well, fuck this, this is, we had something good, and now the Creative Assembly just comes in and completely changes everything. So I really hope that doesn't happen with Attila, and that they stop the practice of only updating the game when there is a DLC, because then we're going to get, it's going to be longer and longer between each update, and like what happened with Rome 2 at the end, the Creative Assembly broke a bunch of things with their last patches, and they just haven't bothered fixing them, although they are things that would literally take 3 minutes to fix by one person going into the files and writing a few numbers down. They haven't done it, and it's annoying as hell. I hope the same thing doesn't happen to Attila. Strength and honor.